I'm Lisa, 28, female. I live in a small but comfortable apartment in the city, the kind where you know the names of your neighbors. For the past 6 years, my life has revolved around one thing: my career as a certified public accountant at a prestigious financial firm. I wasn't just a number cruncher. I was the person they called when the numbers didn't add up, the one who could find the needle of truth in a haystack of data. But my dedication was about to be repaid with the most brutal betrayal I could have ever imagined, forcing me to use my skills not for balancing books, but for balancing the scales of justice. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. For 6 years, Stanton and Finch Financial was more than just my employer, it was my entire world. I started as a junior accountant, fresh out of college with a head full of theories and a heart full of ambition. I climbed the ladder steadily, earning my CPA license and a reputation for being meticulous, reliable, and unshakably ethical. My desk on the 34th floor, with its panoramic view of the city skyline, felt like a testament to my hard work. It was my throne, earned through countless late nights and sacrificed weekends. My boss, David, the head of the finance department, was a classic corporate figure. At 48, he had silvering hair and a preference for delegating. He appreciated my results but wasn't one for the nitty-gritty details. "Just make it happen, Lisa," was his common refrain, and I always did. He saw me as his star player, the one who made his department look good without requiring much direct management. It was a comfortable, if somewhat distant, professional relationship. Then there was Kevin. At 32, Kevin was a senior project manager from another department who often collaborated with finance. He was charming on the surface, with a ready smile and a firm handshake, but there was always something calculating in his eyes. He was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, but also kept a mental ledger of every favor, every mistake. We were professional rivals in a sense, often competing for visibility on high-stakes projects. While I earned respect through diligence and accuracy, Kevin schmoozed his way through the corporate structure. He was a master of office politics, a game I had neither the time nor the inclination to play. I believed, perhaps naively, that good work would always speak for itself. The project that changed everything was a massive undertaking for one of our biggest clients, a tech giant called Innovate Corp. It was a logistical nightmare of an audit, spanning multiple international subsidiaries. For 3 months, I lived and breathed Innovate Corp. I led my team through grueling weeks, untangling complex financial webs and identifying key areas for optimization that would save the client millions. It was my masterpiece. When we presented the final report, the clients were ecstatic. They praised my leadership and the clarity of my team's findings. The following week, David called me into his office. He was beaming. "Lisa, Innovate Corp can't stop singing your praises," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Corporate is very, very pleased. The senior financial analyst position is opening up next month. It's a big step up. Officially, there's a process, but between you and me, it's yours." My heart swelled with pride. This was it, the promotion I had been working towards for years. As a small thank you, he continued, "We're sending you to the annual finance conference in San Francisco next week. All expenses paid. Go, relax, network a little. You've earned it." It felt like the perfect victory lap. A reward for a job well done and a precursor to the next chapter of my career. The day I left for the airport, I tidied my desk, watered my small office plant, and looked out at the city view, feeling on top of the world. Kevin passed by my office door as I was leaving. "Have a great trip, Lisa," he said with that signature smile. "You really deserve a break." I thanked him, oblivious to the venom hiding beneath the surface. I thought it was a peace offering, a moment of professional courtesy. I had no idea it was a goodbye. The 5 days in San Francisco were a blur of keynote speakers, networking events, and gourmet coffee. I felt re-energized, filled with new ideas to bring back to the team. I even bought a small, celebratory gift for my desk, a minimalist pen holder that I thought would look perfect next to my monitor. I took a red-eye flight back, landing early Tuesday morning. I was so eager to get back and start transitioning into my new role that I went straight to the office from the airport, rolling my small suitcase behind me. As I walked into the grand marble-floored lobby of the Stanton and Finch building, I felt the familiar buzz of a new workday, but the feeling quickly soured. Over by the security desk, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was a sad, pathetic pile of my professional life, two large cardboard boxes overflowing with my personal effects. My framed diplomas, the photos of my family, the collection of nerdy accounting mugs I'd accumulated over the years, my favorite textbooks with dozens of sticky notes peeking out, all of it was there. Next to the boxes, my small office plant was wilting, its leaves drooping sadly. It was as if someone had gutted my workspace and dumped it in the most public, humiliating way possible. I rushed over, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is this? What's going on?" I asked the security guard, a man named Frank, who usually greeted me with a friendly nod. Today, his face was a mask of professional indifference. "Sorry, Lisa. I was just told to hold these for you," he said, avoiding my eyes. He gestured to the boxes. "You're not on the employee access list anymore. Confusion warred with a rising tide of panic. Not on the list. That's impossible. My keycard must be malfunctioning." I pulled the card from my wallet and swiped it on the lobby turnstile. The light flashed red. "Access denied." I tried again. Red. "Access denied." The cold, electronic rejection felt like a slap in the face. Frank just shrugged, a silent confirmation of my new status as an outsider. My mind was racing. Was this a mistake, a massive, terrible administrative error? I pulled out my phone to call my boss, David. It went straight to voicemail. "David, it's Lisa. I'm in the lobby. There's some kind of huge mistake with my security access, and all my things are down here. Please call me back immediately." I tried my work email. My password was rejected. My account had been deactivated. Just then, the elevator doors opened, and Kevin walked out, heading for the coffee shop. He saw me standing there, a deer in the headlights next to the wreckage of my career. He paused for a fraction of a second, and a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips. It was there and gone in an instant, replaced by a look of feigned surprise. "Lisa, what are you doing down here?" he asked, his tone dripping with false concern. "Everything okay? I don't know, Kevin," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "My keycard isn't working." He just shook his head slowly. "Oh, wow, that's rough. I'm sure HR will sort it out. I've got to run to a meeting." And with that, he walked away, leaving me standing in the cold, impersonal lobby. The casual cruelty of his dismissal was staggering. In that moment, watching him walk away without a backward glance, I knew this was no mistake. This was an execution. My promotion, my career, my 6 years of loyalty. It had all been terminated while I was 3,000 miles away. And as I looked at my wilting plant in that cardboard box, I had a sinking feeling that the man with the insincere smile was the one holding the axe. I spent the next hour in a daze, sitting on a hard lobby bench next to my boxes, trying to get a hold of someone, anyone. Every call to a colleague's desk phone went unanswered. My texts were met with silence. I was a ghost, already erased from the corporate ecosystem. Finally, my phone rang. It was an unknown number from the office exchange. I answered it immediately. "Is this Lisa?" a clipped, impersonal voice asked. It was a woman from Human Resources I had never spoken to before. "Yes, this is she." The woman's tone was cold and rehearsed. "Lisa, this call is to formally confirm the termination of your employment with Stanton and Finch, effective as of last Friday. A separation package, including your final paycheck, will be mailed to your home address. The company wishes you well in your future endeavors. Wait." I stammered, my mind reeling. Termination? On what grounds? I just led the most successful audit in the department's history. I was promised a promotion. There was a brief pause on the other end. "The company is not required to provide a reason. The decision is final," she stated flatly. "We consider this matter closed." Before I could protest further, she hung up. The finality of it was crushing. I was fired. No reason, no warning, no chance to defend myself. I felt a surge of helpless anger. How could David let this happen? After all I'd done for his department. I called him again and again, but my calls went straight to voicemail every time. He was actively avoiding me. Humiliated and furious, I hailed a taxi and loaded my boxes, the driver giving me a sympathetic look. The ride home was a blur of disbelief and indignation. My whole life had been upended in the span of a morning. Once I was back in my apartment, surrounded by the boxed-up remnants of my career, the shock began to wear off, replaced by a burning need for answers. That's when I thought of Sarah. Sarah was a coordinator in HR, and we had become good friends over the years, often grabbing lunch together. She was smart, discreet, and had a strong moral compass. I sent her a text. I need to talk to you, not as an employee, but as a friend. Can you meet after work? It's urgent. A few minutes later, she replied, of course, my usual spot, 6 p.m. I'm so sorry, Lisa. We met at a quiet little cafe a few blocks from the office. Sarah looked genuinely distressed. I can't believe they did this to you. She said, her voice low. It's completely wrong. What happened, Sarah? Nobody will tell me anything. She sighed, glancing around nervously. Officially, I could get in huge trouble for this, but you deserve to know. The official reason in your file is gross misconduct following a major client complaint. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Client complaint, Innovate Corp. That's impossible. They loved our work. They were thrilled. I know, she said, leaning in closer. It doesn't make sense. The story is that while you were in San Francisco, Innovate Corp. Filed a formal complaint alleging that you had seriously mishandled their data, exposing them to significant risk. They supposedly threatened to pull their entire account. My blood ran cold. It was a lie, a complete fabrication. Who handled this complaint? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah's eyes filled with a mixture of pity and anger. Kevin brought it to David's attention. He discovered an email from the Innovate Corp CFO outlining the whole issue. He claimed he was doing damage control to save the account. David panicked. They held a meeting, and the decision was made to terminate you immediately to appease the client. The pieces started to fall into place, forming a dark and ugly picture. Kevin's smirk in the lobby, David's cowardice. It was a setup. That email is a fake, Sarah. It has to be. I said, my resolve hardening. Can you get me a copy of it? She shook her head sadly. It's already been scrubbed from the system. After you were terminated, the file was sealed and the evidence was deleted as per protocol for resolved issues. It's like it never existed. A deleted email. A guilty smile. Kevin hadn't just stolen my promotion. He had tried to destroy my reputation to do it. He thought by deleting the proof he had committed the perfect crime, but he had underestimated me. I wasn't just an accountant, I was an auditor, and my specialty was finding things that people tried to hide. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt since returning home. The grief and confusion had crystallized into cold, hard determination. They thought they had erased me, but they had forgotten one crucial thing. My mind didn't have a delete button. I had spent 6 years building relationships and understanding the intricate workings of that company. I may have been locked out of their system, but I still had my network and my knowledge. My first move was to bypass the corporate structure entirely and go straight to the source. I had the direct email and phone number for Elizabeth Vance, the vice president of finance at Innovate Corp. She was the main client I had worked with, and we had developed a strong professional rapport during the audit. I drafted a careful email, framing my inquiry as a standard post-project follow-up. I asked if she was satisfied with the final report and if there were any lingering issues my team needed to address. I made no mention of my termination. Her reply came within 2 hours. It was glowing. Lisa, she wrote, we were beyond satisfied. Your team's work was exemplary. In fact, I sent a detailed email to your boss, David, last week commending your outstanding performance and leadership. We're already implementing your suggestions. Thank you again for everything. My heart leaped. It was the confirmation I needed. Not only was there no complaint, but there was a glowing commendation that David had clearly buried. I replied, thanking her and casually adding, that's wonderful to hear. We had a brief moment of confusion over here about some feedback, so I appreciate you clarifying. Would you be willing to forward me a copy of that email you sent to David? I'd love to share it with my team for our internal review. It was a slight risk, but Elizabeth, being the transparent professional she was, sent it over without a second thought. There it was, in black and white, a time-stamped testament to my success, sent the day after I left for my trip. Now I had proof of the lie, but I still needed to expose the liar. I met with Sarah again, this time more discreetly. I showed her Elizabeth's emails. Her eyes went wide. He buried this, she whispered, shaking her head in disgust. Lisa, this is huge. I explained my theory. Kevin had forged the complaint email, showed it to a panicking David, and used the situation to get me fired so he could position himself for the promotion. The only problem was the forged email itself was gone. Maybe it's not completely gone, Sarah mused. IT does nightly backups of the email servers. A deleted email might be gone from the live system, but a forensic search of the backup tapes could recover it. Getting IT to do that for a terminated employee was impossible, but Sarah, in her HR role, had access to personnel files. Kevin has always been a bit arrogant, she said, a thoughtful look on her face. He brags. Let me look at his employee activity record. Maybe there's something there. A day later, she called me, her voice tense with excitement. I found something. It's not the email, but it might be better. Do you remember how Kevin was always talking about his side hustles? I did. He was always vague about it, hinting at consulting gigs. Company policy strictly forbade employees from engaging in any business that could be a conflict of interest, especially one in the same industry. His activity log shows he's been using the company's high-end printers and binding machines late at night, Sarah explained. And I mean a lot, hundreds of pages at a time. I cross-reference the dates. They coincide with proposals being sent to potential Stanton and Finch clients. We ended up losing to an unknown boutique consultancy firm. A quick search of the business registry using the name of that boutique firm gave us our smoking gun. The sole proprietor and owner, Kevin, he wasn't just stealing my promotion, he was actively stealing clients from the company. He was using Stanton and Finch as resources to build his own secret business. The forged complaint wasn't just about getting me out of the way for a promotion. He needed me gone because I was the one most likely to uncover his fraudulent activities. My meticulous nature, my ability to spot irregularities, I was the biggest threat to his entire scheme. He had to eliminate me before I stumbled upon his far greater betrayal. He had created a web of lies, but he left a paper trail. And for a CPA, a paper trail is a roadmap to the truth. I now had two separate threads of damning evidence against Kevin. First, the proof from Innovate Corp that the client complaint was a fabrication, which meant my termination was based on a lie. Second, the concrete evidence that he was running a competing business using company resources and stealing clients. A fireable offense that bordered on criminal fraud. I also had proof, via Elizabeth's email, that David had received a glowing review of my work and had chosen to ignore it, making him complicit at worst and grossly negligent at best. My first instinct was to march into the office and slap the evidence on David's desk. But I knew that wouldn't work. He would go into damage control mode, protecting himself and the company from scandal. They would offer me a settlement with a non-disclosure agreement, sweep Kevin's transgressions under the rug, and I would be left with a tainted reputation and no real justice. Kevin would likely get a quiet slap on the wrist and be asked to resign. That wasn't enough. I didn't just want my name cleared. I wanted them to be held accountable in a way they couldn't escape. I needed to go over their heads. Straight to the top, Stanton and Finch was a large corporation with a board of directors and a strict code of ethics, at least on paper. Like most big companies, they had a corporate whistleblower hotline and an anonymous email for reporting ethics violations. It was managed by an independent third party to ensure impartiality. This was my weapon. I spent the next 3 days meticulously building my case, treating it like the most important audit of my life. I created a detailed, chronological timeline of events, starting with the success of the Innovate Corp project and the promise of a promotion. I included a copy of Elizabeth's email commending my work, highlighting the date it was sent to David. Then I laid out the fabricated complaint, explaining how it was used as a pretext for my immediate termination while I was out of town. The second part of the file was dedicated to Kevin's shadow company. I compiled everything Sarah had helped me find. The business registration documents listing him as the owner, the suspicious printing logs from the office, and a list of at least 3 major clients Stanton and Finch had lost in the past year to Kevin's boutique firm. I even did some open-source intelligence work, finding his company's Bare Bones website, which used marketing language suspiciously similar to Stanton and Finch's own pitch decks. I cross-referenced the dates we lost those clients with Kevin's expense reports. Sure enough, he had reported client entertainment, expenses on days he was actually meeting with those same clients for his own firm. He was wining and dining them on the company's dime, only to steal them for himself. It was brazen, arrogant, and incredibly stupid. I packaged everything into a single, comprehensive PDF document. It was nearly 50 pages long, complete with exhibits, annotations, and a clear, concise summary of the allegations. Wrongful termination based on fraudulent information, and a senior employee engaged in corporate fraud, theft of clients, and misuse of company assets. I wrote a cover letter, presenting myself as a concerned employee who had discovered this information and wished to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. On a Friday afternoon, I went to a public library several towns over, used one of their computers, and created a brand new, untraceable email address. With a deep breath, I attached the file and sent it to the Corporate Ethics Committee, the head of the Internal Audit Department, and every single member of the Board of Directors. The subject line was simple and impossible to ignore: urgent, evidence of internal fraud and wrongful termination in the Finance Department. I hit send. The trap was set. The audit nobody saw coming was now officially underway. There was no way for David or Kevin to control this narrative. It was out of their hands, and it was about to land on the desks of the most powerful people in the company. For a few days, there was silence. I started to feel a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Had they received it? Were they ignoring it? Was the anonymous hotline just a corporate fiction designed to placate employees? My fears were put to rest on Wednesday morning when I received a call from a lawyer. She introduced herself as a representative from the corporate headquarters legal department. Her tone was serious and respectful. "Ms. Martinez," she said, using my last name, "we are conducting a high-level internal investigation into a matter in which you are a key witness. We have reviewed the information sent to the Ethics Committee, and we take these allegations with the utmost seriousness. Would you be willing to come to the head office tomorrow morning to provide a formal statement?" She assured me that my presence was as a cooperating witness and that I would be protected from any form of retaliation. The speed and formality of the response told me everything I needed to know. My anonymous tip had hit them like a bomb. The next morning, I walked not into my old office building, but into the imposing glass tower of the corporate headquarters downtown. I was escorted to the executive floor and shown into the main boardroom. The room was intimidating, with a massive oak table that could seat 30 people. Seated on one side were 3 people I didn't recognize, 2 stern-looking individuals who I assumed were from the internal audit team, and the lawyer I had spoken to. On the other side of the table sat David and Kevin. The color had drained from their faces. David looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a week, his usual confident demeanor completely gone. Kevin was trying to project an air of nonchalance, but the nervous twitch in his eye and the way he kept adjusting his tie gave him away. They looked up as I entered, and Kevin's jaw practically hit the floor. The anonymous source was the person he thought he had successfully destroyed. The look of pure shock on his face was deeply satisfying. I took a seat directly across from them next to the legal team. The lead auditor, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, began the meeting. "We are here to discuss a series of severe breaches of company policy and potential illegal activities," she began, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "Mr. Harrison, were you aware that Ms. Martinez received a formal commendation from Innovate Corp on the 15th of last month?" David stammered. "Well, things were moving very quickly." The auditor cut him off, sliding a copy of Elizabeth's email across the table. "And yet 2 days later you terminated her based on a supposed complaint from the same client, a complaint for which no verifiable evidence exists. Can you explain that discrepancy?" David wilted under her gaze, mumbling something about trusting his senior staff. Then she turned to Kevin. "Mr. Miller, let's talk about your consulting firm, Miller Advisory Group." She dropped a thick binder on the table. It was a printed copy of my entire investigation file. "Can you explain why your firm acquired 3 former Stanton and Finch clients immediately after you were involved in pitching our services to them?" Kevin started to bluster, claiming it was a coincidence. "And can you explain these?" The auditor continued, sliding copies of his expense reports next to photos of him meeting with those same clients, which the internal team had likely acquired from social media or other sources. "You seem to have been entertaining these individuals on our company's dime right before they decided to hire your personal company." Kevin's face turned from pale to beet red. He was caught. He tried to deny it, to spin a story, but the evidence was overwhelming. When they produced the logs of his late night printing and binding sessions, matching them to his proposal templates, he finally cracked. He started blaming David for putting too much pressure on him, trying to deflect and minimize. David, in turn, accused Kevin of misleading him. The two of them began to turn on each other right there in the boardroom, a pathetic display of self-preservation. I sat back and watched the fire I had started consume them both. I didn't have to say a word. My meticulously prepared document had done all the talking for me. The confrontation wasn't a shouting match. It was a quiet, systematic dismantling of their careers, piece by piece. The aftermath of that meeting was swift and brutal. The corporate auditors showed no mercy. Kevin was terminated immediately. Security escorted him from the boardroom directly to his office to pack a single box under supervision before being walked out of the building for the last time. But his problems were just beginning. The legal department informed him that the company would be pursuing legal action against him for fraud, theft of intellectual property, and breach of his fiduciary duty. They were seeking damages for the clients he had stolen and the resources he had misused. His side business was finished, his reputation was in tatters, and he was facing a mountain of legal bills. David didn't fare much better. While he wasn't involved in the fraud, his gross negligence and poor judgment had allowed it to happen. He had terminated a star employee based on a lie from a manipulative subordinate without performing an ounce of due diligence. He had created a massive liability for the company and fostered a toxic environment. The board gave him an ultimatum: resign immediately and accept a minimal severance package, or be terminated for cause, which would tarnish his record permanently. He chose to take the early retirement option. Within a week, his name was off the masthead. He left in disgrace, his long career ending not with a bang, but with a quiet, shameful whimper. The company then turned its attention to me. The day after the meeting, the head of corporate HR called me personally. She offered a sincere, unreserved apology on behalf of the entire organization. "What happened to you was unacceptable, Lisa," she said. "It was a catastrophic failure of management, and we are deeply sorry." They offered to reinstate me immediately, not just to my old job, but to the senior financial analyst position I had been promised, with a significant salary increase and full back pay for the time I had missed. They were also offering a substantial five-figure bonus as a formal apology for the distress they had caused. A month ago, that offer would have been everything I ever wanted. But as I listened to her speak, I realized something had fundamentally changed within me. The trust was broken. How could I go back to work in a place where such a betrayal was possible? How could I look at my colleagues and not wonder who would be the next to throw me under the bus for their own gain? "Thank you for the offer," I said politely but firmly. "I appreciate it, but I have to decline." The HR head sounded surprised but respected my decision. I wasn't without a plan. The first person I had called after the corporate meeting was Elizabeth Vance from Innovate Corp. I told her the whole story. She was appalled at how Stanton and Finch had treated me and furious that my work had been used as part of such a deceitful scheme. 2 days later, she called me back with an offer. Innovate Corp was expanding its internal finance team, and they needed a senior financial strategist to oversee their international accounts. It was a bigger role than the one I had been promised at my old firm, with better pay, better benefits, and a seat at a table where my skills were genuinely valued. I accepted on the spot. I even managed to help Sarah. During my discussions with corporate, I made sure to mention the discreet but highly ethical HR coordinator, who had upheld her duties with integrity. When a manager position opened up in her department following the Shea Cup, she was the top candidate and got the job. Today, my view is from the 45th floor of the Innovate Corp Tower. I'm leading a team of bright, motivated analysts, and my work is challenging and fulfilling. I threw out the wilted plant from that sad cardboard box and now have a thriving succulent on my new windowsill. I never saw Kevin or David again. They became ghosts of my past, cautionary tales of what happens when ambition curdles into treachery. I didn't just get my career back, I built a better one on the wreckage of their lies. I learned that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is the very thing that sets you free, and I learned that the most satisfying justice isn't about revenge, it's about closing a poisoned ledger and starting a fresh, clean one.